gamers, what's up? Muzz here at L1 Games with a new video for you. Today I'm going to do something really different. You've never seen it. All these years on YouTube, and I've never really talked about the process of signing a lease and what I do and how I do it. It's basically just as easy as signing a paper, but maybe not what you expect. So I'm going to just, as I go through my lease and sign my lease, I'm going to let you guys see what happens and how I do it and what I think about when I'm doing it. So let's just go check it out. All right, so right now I'm just going through the lease and I have to look at every single little bit of it, make sure everything's where I want it to be and what I want it to be. We did negotiate this lease, so it should be all squared away. All the T's should be crossed, the I's should be dotted. I just have to go through, read everything, then I'll click. I'm doing it right now on an initial, and then I actually have a sample of my handwriting in here, and I click for the initials and I click for the signature at the end of the lease. So once I do that, adopt an initial, boom, it sends me down to the next one, but I'll scroll back and look at all the ones prior also, and just keep on doing that until I get to the end. Now, while I'm looking at this and making sure everything is where I want it, I also want to talk about how I walked the store and I looked for anything that I thought was maybe something that I wouldn't have accepted, like a crack in the wall, for example. That's just an example, but maybe something in the store that I wouldn't accept if I were signing a new lease. Last time, for example, I had just had a fire inspection and my exit signs weren't up to code. So before I signed a new lease, I had them put new ones in. Typically, once you sign a lease, anything that happens in the store, within the walls of the store, is your responsibility to fix. So those signs were really expensive. I think they were like $1,600 a piece or something stupid. And the mall replaced them for me in order to get me to sign a new lease. So that's always something to consider. I walked around, I looked at the ceilings, I looked at the fixtures, I made sure nothing was like broken. The environmental controls work okay. Now, if something were wrong, I would just ask the mall to fix it before I signed the lease. But really, I know the spot pretty well. I knew going into it there was nothing wrong, but I took a really good hard look to make sure there was nothing I needed them to do before I signed a new lease, just to be sure, like last year with those exit signs, which I didn't have to look for that. The fire marshal came in and told me they needed done. So yeah, it's nice to know you can get things fixed before you sign the lease and you don't have to fork out of your pocket for it. It's funny that I just mentioned that because I've just gotten to the part in the lease that tenant has had the opportunity to make a full inspection and evaluation of the space and made its own determination of the suitability of the space and the shopping center for tenants' use and businesses, and acknowledges it is entering into this lease based solely on its own investigation. And so go on, and it reads, tenant acknowledges that the landlord has made no representations to tenant as to projected or likely sales volume, blah, blah, blah. And when you get further into the lease, there actually is the part that tenant agrees to and does accept the space in its present as is, where is condition with all faults. So that's definitely the reason you want to walk through the store and check it all out. There's also a lot of other little things. Tenant shall use the space under the trade name specified above, so you can't change the name of your store without asking them. May be used and occupied by the tenant solely for the purpose stated above. So in my lease, it says that I sell video games, memorabilia, replicas, all kinds of stuff. I put a lot of merch in there as well, so I have a wide range of things I can sell outside of video games. And I made sure of that when I came to the mall because I knew that I was going to kind of widen my reach involving the customers, my clientele, because there's a lot of impulse buys, and I wanted my store to have kind of a Spencer's type vibe also. That's how you reach the mall crowd. And then there's all the other little rules. I can't have stuff outside the store. I can't sublease the location to another tenant. Now, in a temporary lease like the one I sign, there's actually a landlord's right of early termination. And basically, I mean, it says, if I do all this stuff, I can get kicked out. I'm not going to break the rules, so none of that's a concern. But if they want to lease my spot to a big corporate entity, they can do that. And they only have to give me 30 days notice. But I already knew that also going in. But they'll normally, in a situation like that, offer you another storefront. Like when I moved to this storefront, however many years ago that was. What was that, 5 years ago now?
they actually bumped me out of my old store so Foot Locker could move in, but I would have taken the store whether Foot Locker was moving in or not, so I ended up where I wanted to be. And here's a little interesting piece of the lease: no hawking. Hawking I've seen in other leases as well that I've signed in other places. It's basically when you're super aggressive with customers. So if, say, you have a kiosk, for example, you're not allowed to reach out to a customer who's more than an arm's length away from your kiosk. You can't touch them, you can't hand them things. There's a whole thing in here, aggressive soliciting, that sort of thing. You're not allowed to ask things of customers. Actually, sometimes I think I see the people at the kiosks doing it, but they're super aggressive down there, especially during the holiday. But there's actually a clause in the lease that says they're not allowed to. So if someone ever does that to you at a mall, you can go to the mall office and complain about that. Other little things you'll see in a lease cover things from percentage rent, which pretty much every store has. If you make over a certain amount, you have to pay 12% or 10%, depending where you're at, to the mall of your gross sales. Then there's late charges if you don't pay your rent on time or report your numbers. They dictate how much you're making by your reports, so you actually give them your gross figures every month. And then if you're late on your rent or don't submit your numbers, a lot of times you can incur fees for being late on those things. And of course, every lease will also include something that is basically a confidentiality agreement. It says you can't talk about the monetary figures, how much I make here, how much I pay here, that sort of thing. So when people say, how much do you pay for this spot? I tell them I don't really talk about that because it's actually in my lease that I'm not allowed to. Other things these leases include are things like rules on space design, hours of operation. You have to state that you will be open for the hours of operation as designated in the lease. Display and signage. There are things you have to do in terms of how you display things, where you display them, what types of display you use, what kind of signage, all that good stuff. Advertising, product demo. Maintenance is a thing. You have to keep your area in a safe condition, and everything has to be maintained properly. So the mall can actually come in and say, hey, you aren't doing this and you need to do it. Damage, anything you damage within the mall, like even if you have fixtures that belong to the mall in your store, you have to fix them. Or if I damage, say, my slat wall before I left, I would have to fix it. Insurance is another thing you have to have. If I don't have insurance, I would get booted from the mall. But it's good to have. If someone falls down in the store, hits their head, and wants to try to blame me, they can't sue me. And well, they can sue me, but they'll end up, fighting my insurance company. And that's just it's good to have insurance whether you're in the mall or not. Everyone should if they're in business. So you got to have that, though. They actually have a thing in here that says the return and exchange policy. You have to visibly display your return policy. It's funny, I've just had a thing on Google reviews, a guy who said, be wary of their return policy, blah, blah, blah. But I have my return policy posted 8 times in this store. I also have a stack of little return policies people can take and read. I put one in every bag that goes out the door. And of course, we answer any questions about the return policy. I mean, it's so transparent that it's ridiculous for anyone to leave the store saying that they don't know what the return policy is. It means that they just weren't looking. It talks about designated parking areas. All people who are employees of the mall have to park in a certain area past a certain point in the parking lot, so they don't take potential customer parking. That's basic. And that's really a lot of the big stuff you would notice in a lease, but there are a ton of other little things, and you have to read through the whole thing at least once. After that, you pretty much know what's going to be in your lease every time. But I go through it and I always scroll through just to see if anything seems like it may have changed in the last year or so, and just to make sure I'm up on everything that I need to do and have here in the store, because I want my store to run right and I want to be a good tenant in the mall. So I like to follow the rules. Okay, so I am at the end here, and I'm clicking on the last few sign things, and with this done, I click finish, and I'm here at the very least for another year. So, finish. You're done signing. Continue. And with that, I am finished. I've signed a new lease, and this is kind of the process I go through every year. And I'm always very thorough when I do it. I just don't want anything to go wrong. I don't expect anything major to change in the lease, but like, it is worth mentioning that there was a change in recent years here where they added a utility fee, for example, to short-term tenants like myself. So I know I've been here 10 years, right? This is my 11th year going into, and I'm a short-term tenant, but that's what I am. So they added this utility fee. It's just a little thing, but you know, that's something you consider when you renegotiate your lease. And there is a negotiation every time you do it. It's not just as simple as they hand you a lease and they say, here you go, you know, enjoy. So, yeah, I've had a pleasant experience here though, and this negotiation went really smooth, and my leasing agent was really cool, so I'm very pleased with the way things have gone, and I'll be glad to be here another year and see how things go. This puts me at, 21 years in business and 11 years here at the mall. So there you go.
And that's it. So I hope you guys found that interesting. I just thought it would be something fun to share. And I'm going to get out of here. So please do subscribe if you haven't already. Guess what? I stream now every now and then. You can check me out at L1 Streams right here on YouTube. And maybe if you catch a live stream, you can ask questions, say hi, whatever you want to do, drop by. But please do be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to both L1 Games and L1 Streams. And check me out at both places. You can also hit me on Instagram at L1Muzz, Facebook at L1 Games, and Twitter at L1 Games. I do a lot in my other social media stuff, so you definitely want to check it out. Follow me, socialize with me, be a part of it. I love making new friends, and all of you are my friends. So thanks a lot, and I will see you all soon.